Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. And this week, we're sitting down with the last founding member of 100 Black Men of America Incorporated, Jesse C. Swanigan. Please allow me to salute you for all of what it is you were able to do, not just for the city of St. Louis, but just America as a whole, as far as being a pivotal part of what we know to be 100 Black Men of America, which has chapters throughout the entire country. So with all that being said, where did it start for you?
I'm from Cairo, Illinois, which is about 150 miles south of St. Louis.
What was it like growing up there?
It was segregated, considering, shall we say, that was back in the 1940s and 50s. I graduated from high school in 1951. So that was in the middle of, shall we say, segregation, and we experienced it extremely there. Just for instance, we could not use the public library. We had just a small library in our high school. We could not use the public swimming pool. In fact, when segregation ended, to make sure that blacks did not use the swimming pool, they filled it with concrete. And I went to segregated schools throughout, got the hand-me-down books, etc. That was the name of the game there. Went through the back door.
It's unfortunate because my father, he's 91, and he knew that to be his reality growing up in West Virginia. He mentioned to me when it was time to eat, they had you go around the back of the restaurant to pick up your food. He went to a segregated high school. So to just know that that's a reality that you knew as a child, and then considering how I grew up was completely different. And we're one generation removed between myself and you. As I mentioned, you're a part of my father's generation. To just know what you guys had to go through, and despite having gone through that, what it is you managed to accomplish.
My mother's always wanted us to put education first, and she raised us without a father, and we pushed education, so I wanted to pursue it. So after high school, I came to St. Louis, got a job, worked, shall we say, for a year to get some money to start in college in St. Louis.
What was that transition like for you, going from this little town to a much bigger city in St. Louis? Fresh out of high school.
The transition was unbelievable. Coming from a small town, shall we say, there was no stoplight where you walked everywhere. For instance, in school, for instance, we walked home for lunch and walked back to school. And to come to St. Louis where there was transportation, the big buildings, etc., shall we say, places to go, things to do. It was just a wide opening effect. It was unbelievable for a young kid, shall we say, 18 years old. Transformation.
I can imagine. But you stayed focused despite being in this new environment. You could have easily got distracted, but you saw fit to say, no, I'm going to keep my eyes on the prize. So once you transitioned into college, were you working and going to school, or were you just a full-time student?
When I started college, believe it or not, I was going to school in the daytime and working in a steel mill at night with no car, taking public transportation, getting home, shall we say, about 1 o'clock in the morning, having to get up, shall we say, the next morning at 8 o'clock to get ready to go take classes, and to have to take, public transportation to classes. But it was a goal I had in mind, and I knew I had to do it. There was no one but me to do it. I couldn't depend on anybody else. And back in those days, we didn't have Pell Grants, and we didn't have scholarships and all of that. Yeah. By the way, in 1951, when I registered at Washington University in St. Louis, I was one of the first African Americans admitted to Washington University in St. Louis. And that was back in 1951. Well, 52, actually, yeah.
So you're a trailblazer all around. Like, what was that like being a trailblazer on the collegiate level? You were one of the first blacks to attend Washington University. What was that experience like, being in an environment where you went from being in a segregated educational learning setting to now being in higher ed, one of the only blacks in the classroom?
About all of my shortcomings in regard to what I had been taught in, shall we say, segregated school. And that meant that I had to take, shall we say, some preliminary courses to be able to move ahead on the college level, which took more time.
So it's safe to say the learning experiences you had at the segregated level, it didn't properly prepare you for higher ed. So you had to do what you had to do once you got to college to accelerate your learning so that you could be
Correct.
college
That was the
proficient.
only way you could move ahead to move into the regular courses that were required. Okay, if you did not have, shall we say, the adequate grade scores, courses to prepare you for the courses that was required, then you had to take preliminary courses. And after taking the preliminary course, then you can move up to the regular course. So that took more time.
Okay.
I can't remember what it wasn't called preliminary, it was called
Right.
something else, but I can't remember exactly what it was called.
So then once you completed your educational journey in St. Louis, did you stay in St. Louis?
I moved between St. Louis and Chicago. I had relatives in Chicago, and they helped me to get a better job during the summer months. And then I stayed on after I got that job and took a different job to make more money. I was able to save more money to go to a state school. The Washington University is a private school. Tuition was very expensive, okay?
Mhm.
But I was able to go to the University of Illinois, which was much cheaper, okay, and take the required courses, okay. And that was what I did with the money that I made in Chicago. I took it to University of Illinois in Champaign. And then after, shall we say, completing 2 years in Champaign, then I came back to St. Louis and worked part-time and finished my bachelor's at Washington University in St. Louis, and then went ahead to get an MBA from St. Louis University in St. Louis.
That's an amazing accomplishment, even for my generation, to have your MBA. I can only imagine how amazing that was for a man of your time. The average person of color wasn't even going to college, let alone getting their MBA. So what was the driving force for you to understand and realize it's not enough for me to just have a BA, I have to get an MBA?
Well, looking around, seeing what was going on, at that particular point in time, I'd started working at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft Company, and that's another experience because I started there being without my degree. I came up short 4 hours, and so I had to go back and finish 4 hours. But then when I finished the 4 hours, then I was able to, shall we say, move from a position in the factory to an office position, being one of the first to move at McDonnell Douglas from African American, from working in the factory to, shall we say, an office position. So with that experience, seeing what was going on around me, I said, wait a minute, I might as well go ahead now and get an MBA since McDonnell Douglas was going to pay for it. This is different. They're going to pay for it. So I went ahead and got the MBA and at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft. McDonnell Douglas Aircraft is now Boeing Aircraft now. McDonnell Douglas and Boeing merged back in, I think, about 1992. It's Boeing. If you've ever flown on a major aircraft now, it's a Boeing plane. And that's where I worked for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked my way up, shall we say, McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, from, shall we say, a lower position to a corporate auditor. And when I retired in 1992 from Boeing Company, right after the merger, I was the only African American in the corporate financial office.
Man, that's amazing. So to have that ascend, working for a company that has a lot to do with how we get from point A to point B via plane, Boeing. So you clearly the embodiment of elevation, having gone from working in the factory to working in not just in the office, but to ascend to a corporate auditor. What was some of the hurdles that you had to navigate or some of the things that you had to withstand?
Of course, I wasn't welcome into the office, and that meant that I had to, shall we say, work harder to make sure that I didn't make any mistakes and that I got the job done, and that at the same time I maintained my cool in regard to my coworkers. It was very, very difficult, but it was something you had to do. What is interesting is that, shall we say, in that process, there were a number of instances where I had to speak out. Just to give you one thing that happened, a requirement came down that we all had to do, shall we say, a certain type of training in regard to government requirements. And that meant we had to go off for a week in training. So I went off for the weekend training, and what happened was, I, after the week, we had to take the exam. I took the exam, and the instructor called me in and said, "Mr. Swanigan, you didn't pass." I said, "What? Why didn't I pass?" He said, "Because you didn't do the last page of the exam." I reported that to my manager, and the manager said, "Well, you have to go back and take it again, but you will have to pay for it." And I said, "Wait a minute. My coworker was sitting over there. She did the same thing. She didn't pass, and you paid for her to go back." He said, "Oh, did we?" I said, "Yes, you did." So he said, "Okay, go ahead and sign up. We'll take care of it." Those types of instances where you had to speak up. If you didn't speak up, you were just pushed aside. And I can think of another instance where my boss said to me, "There is a position that is open that in another department that I feel that you're qualified for, and I'm going to recommend you for that job." So I went over to interview in that department. The manager of that department said, "Mr. Swanigan, you have all of the requirements for this position. According to EEO, I have to interview you. But I'm telling you up front, we can't give you that position because that position has been slotted for somebody else." So those are the types of things that you had to endure. But I had a good boss. Went back to my boss and related that story to her. And she said, "Okay, I'll give you a raise." So I got a raise. But those are the things you had to endure as you, shall we say, being an African American in a corporate environment, being one of the first that's out there, and having to at the same time maintain not being an angry black person, but being able to push for your rights at the same time.
To your exact point, what we had to do then and now, we have to be able to articulate ourselves in a manner that doesn't make us be seen as a threat in those kind of environments, because they're quick to want to label us to be something that's a threat or we're angry or whatever the case may be. But we have to just both then and now learn how to articulate and express ourselves in a manner that is going to have the information that we're conveying to be better received.
Right now, in this environment, most times you have a mentor, okay, which you can call upon to give you some guidance and can stick by you and be there for you. But when back then, I didn't have a mentor. I was there by myself. Okay. And that's a different picture. Completely. Yeah.
Completely different picture. You were the first. You became the mentor.
That is true. That is so true. I did. Yes, that is so true. Yeah.
So now, just so our viewers and listeners can understand the capacity in which you served as a corporate auditor, what are some of the things that corporate auditors are responsible for doing in an organization?
Most times when people think in terms of corporate auditors, they're thinking in terms of somebody who's working on budgets and figures and balance sheets, etc. Well, corporate auditor does all of the above. You work on budgets, you work on balance sheets, all of that, but it does not. It applies to more than just figures. You can be auditing contracts. You can be auditing work procedures. You can be auditing contractors, etc. All of that is encompassed in that title of corporate auditor. So, in other words, for instance, I had to take engineering courses because I had from time to time to work with engineers on different contracts and to be able to audit the process that they were doing to say whether or not, shall we say, once we set a budget, whether or not we were keeping within the budget in regard to that particular contract. So I had to know exactly what was going on from a blueprint engineering perspective. So those types of things.
And speaking of mentorship, one of the things that the 100 Black Men of America Incorporated does is that it's a mentoring component with that. So the people who are young in their profession, they got have men such as you to follow. So what led to you, as well as others, founding the 100 Black Men of America?
Well, 100 Black Men of America, the concept came from New York back in 1963. In fact, 100 Black Men of America Incorporated will be celebrating our 40th anniversary in June in New York. Hope you can come over to our conference. Okay. But the concept came from New York, And people like the mayor of New York, David Dinkins, Nathaniel Goldston, Livingston Wingate, and Robert Magnum, they had the idea that they wanted to put together an organization that would represent professional black men, providing them with, shall we say, a platform to speak out in regard to issues that were going on around them, as well as to put in place a process where they could mentor young black men, providing, shall we say, scholarships, leadership, etc., for them. And that's where the concept came from. What happened was that Dr. William Haling was a part of that group in New York, and he moved to New Jersey, where you are now, and he established a chapter in New Jersey. Then he moved to L.A., and he established a chapter in L.A. So there were about 5, 6 different groups calling themselves 100 Black Men. So Dr. Haling wanted to put together a national group. So what he did was to send out correspondence to all those groups, those 5, 6, 7 groups that were using the name 100 Black Men, asking them to come to a meeting in Las Vegas to discuss the idea of having a national organization. So I was one of the first from St. Louis who went to that meeting in St. Louis, in Las Vegas, because we had a chapter already established in St. Louis. And after, shall we say, I think it was 3 different meetings, we came up with 100 Black Men of America Incorporated. That was 40 years ago. And the emphasis at that particular time, as is now, was on mentoring. In fact, our little card that we pass out, which says what we do, it says 100 Black Men of America Incorporated improves the quality of life for the communities we serve. The 100 is the largest network of African American male mentors and influencers in the nation, work collectively with partners to transfer the lives of underrepresented and disenfranchised youth with a focus on African American youth. So that was how we organized. That was how 100 Black Men of America came into place. We started it 40 years ago with 5 chapters. Now we have 103 chapters, with a chapter in London and a chapter in Turks and Caicos. We have our own office building in Atlanta with the CEO and a full staff. So we're moving ahead, and we're constantly growing. And our conference our 40th annual conference will be in New York. Hope you can come, June 17th through the 21st.
That's awesome. I will definitely put that on my calendar. I would love to be there. I've attended 100 Black Men of America Incorporated events in the past, and I've always had a phenomenal time
I think
there.
I've seen you in places. I keep looking at you. Yes, okay, good. Yeah, we'd be glad to have you come over.
Listen, I would love to come. I would love to be there in attendance with individuals such as yourself. You are a living legend. To have that legacy, as well as what it is you've been able to establish, independent of what it is your role was with 100 Black Men of America Incorporated, but just that person who came from those humble beginnings in Illinois and to navigate all of those hurdles as pertains to educating yourself, then relocating to Chicago, and then coming back to St. Louis, and then being able to ascertain employment with a company of the magnitude of a Boeing, and then to ascend to that of a corporate auditor. Those are all amazing accomplishments.
Well, thank you. One of the things I found out in that process was when after I retired, after 35 years at Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. By the way, I retired because what was happening was that they could bring in a couple of accountants from college, about 4, for what they're paying me. So they decided, okay, we got to freeze them out some kind of way. And so I had the biggest office I ever had, no employees. And when we merged McDonnell with Boeing, they said, okay, you're going to have to come to Seattle more and spend more time in Seattle. I hate Seattle. And then, because it rains too much. And then for my assignments, I was given little towns in Mississippi, Alabama, and all of that, where I had to travel to those little towns and whatnot. So I said, wait a minute. we're on a point system in regard to retirement. And my doctor said to me, hey, it's time to move out. Not you're going to have health issues. So I decided to retire from Boeing. And what was interesting, prior to that, my retirement from Boeing, I had answered a ad from University of Missouri St. Louis as, shall we say, a professor. And they wanted me full time. And I said, well, I can't come full time because I'm employed by Boeing. So when I decided to retire from Boeing, I was turning in all of my materials at Boeing in the morning and moving into my office at the University of Missouri St. Louis that afternoon. I said, wait a minute, am I retiring? I'm just changing positions. But anyway, point to that was I was there for 20 years and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I said to myself later, perhaps I should have gone the other route, being a professor and not being an auditor, because I really enjoyed, shall we say, working with students, etc., etc.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person, whether it's merch, art, or digital goods. Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. It seems to me like you enjoy shaping and molding the minds of future leaders. You're able to do that with 100 Black Men of America Incorporated in the capacity as it relates to mentoring young folk. And then you're able to do the same thing in the classroom. So you clearly have a spirit of giving back.
I continue to do that. I'm not sitting. I'm not going on 93. I turned 92 back in November, but I'm still not sitting down. I'm still doing things. For instance, I sit on a couple of boards. I sit on a board in St. Louis, which is an appointment from the county commissioner, called Aging Ahead. And the mission of Aging Ahead is to support individuals through their journey of aging. Okay. The vision is that we want to help people as they age make the journey, shall we say, much easier. So I sit on that board of directors. I also sit on another board, which I'm very proud of, the African American Advisory Council for Alzheimer's at Washington University in St. Louis. I did sit on the Alzheimer's board for a number of years, but Alzheimer's is running rapid in the African American community, especially among African females. And this particular advisory group works to get more African Americans involved in research projects. For instance, all of the research that's been done is on white people. Okay, but we need to get African Americans involved in the research so that, shall we say, what's coming out of the research can also apply to African Americans. So that's two of the boards that I still sit on right now.
That's amazing. And I have elderly parents, and some of the things that I encourage them to do is to stay active, and clearly you're active, and the different things that they can do to ensure that they age ahead, as you mentioned, in a manner that serves them well. What are some of the things that you would give as advice for my parents as it relates to things that you've come to realize that has helped you stay sharp as a tack, as I can tell? I mean, you are still savant intellectually and things of that nature. So what are some of the things that you adopted as you've aged ahead that you think that would be a good practice for somebody to implement it to their day-to-day?
The first thing I would say is what my doctor says to me: don't stop and sit down and hold your hands and watch television. You got to stay active. You got to keep the mind active. You got to keep moving. That's first of all. The next thing is don't stress yourself out. Deal with stress. It's going to come up, but deal with it. I always tell anybody, if something comes up during the day, make sure you try to solve it before you go to bed at night, because you don't want to take it with you to bed. Make sure that, shall we say, you have people around you that want to, shall we say, adhere to higher levels and not, shall we say, to pulling you down or trying to pull you down to mold you into their fashion. but to understand that you are an individual and that you have your own thoughts, etc., etc., etc. Those are the things. And of course, there's this whole thing with African Americans eating right. You got to make sure that, shall we say, you put that salt shaker down and put that red meat aside, and to make sure seriously that you, shall we say, know who you are, know what your goals are, put all of, shall we say, your working hours or days into being who you want to be, not who somebody else wants you to be. And that's most important. If not, if you're trying to be something that you're not going to be, you're going to be stressed out. We already live with high blood pressure because of our background from, shall we say, the pork with the salt pork that we used to eat, the bacon we love, and all that kind of stuff. So you got to, shall we say, make sure now that you understand that, but you're going to, shall we say, knowing that you're going to work to look at it all from a different perspective and do what you have to do. And the other thing is, there's another side of me which I didn't talk about, the Christian side. I'm a Presbyterian by religion. I've held a number of positions in the Presbyterian Church, all the way to the top. I'm very strong with my religion. Make sure that, shall we say, you know that there is a higher power that you have to answer to.
I agree. I think higher power is something that I definitely lean on a lot. That's the foundation of all of the things that drives me, and it keeps you in a position where you stay humble, you stay grounded, but more importantly, it sustains you, because if you're going through life trying to figure all these things out as they come your way, whether it's stress, adversity, or whatever, and you're just taking it upon yourself to deal with that on your own, and you don't have anyone to give that to, that's a lot of stress, to say the least. If you can let go and let God, then that's a practice that it removes some of the burden of having to figure out everything. It removes some of the burden of having to deal with the stress and trying to problem solve. If you can give that to somebody, then, that's a huge weight removed from your spirit.
So true. And in this day and time, considering what's going on, hey, we need to call upon that higher spirit more. But keeping in mind, with all the things that's going on, we as African Americans, we know how to survive, and we will survive.
Right. We've been surviving since the beginning of the time. We are the architects of civilization, math, science, as we know it to be. And we have to just continue to remind ourselves. And that's one of the things that prompted us to want to create this platform. We want to be able to inspire people, whether it's from our generation, your generation, or the leaders of tomorrow. We want to show them examples of who they can be. And as you mentioned, don't allow society to tell you who you can be. You can be more than what society may have you to believe, more than what the 6 o'clock news has you to believe. You can be a corporate auditor. You can be a medical professional. You can be a lawyer, whatever it is that you aspire to want to do and become. But sometimes, as I say, Mr. Swanigan, no matter where we may be from physically, mentally, we're all from Missouri. We're from the show me state. Show me who I can be. And if there's not enough examples for someone to look to and be inspired by, then a lot of times people don't have the fortitude that you have to be the first. They're more likely to follow based on what it is they see.
You got to step out on your own, step out on faith, and move ahead.
You have all of this knowledge, you have all of this experience, and one of the things that I've heard from other people is they say, once we join the ancestors, we don't want to take that knowledge with us. So have you done anything to put all of this knowledge and expertise in the form of a book?
One person said to me, it's time for me to write a book. He has a person, all I have to do is just sit and talk to that person, and that person will record it. I'm looking at that, okay? And I'm trying to get to that point where I can sit with somebody and, shall we say, relate. My schedule has been so hectic that I haven't had the time to just sit and talk about the past, because I've had so much going on in the present and everything. So I'm almost to that point. I have one other thing that I want to do, and that is going back to something I started years ago. I want to do it now, shall we say, as a hobby, to go back to my music. And I'm almost to that point. In fact, I'll be talking to some teacher, a music teacher, next month about some lessons. I want to get that I want to do. But it's possible that I can do this at the same time, because I'll have more time. I have decided that it's time for me to, shall we say, pull away, learn how to say no, and to be able to have more time to myself just to do what I want to do, not what, shall we say, is required of me to do or that I need to do. So I'm at that point where, crazy enough, I might not go out of the house for 2 or 3 days. I played piano years ago.
Okay.
I'm going back to that, to pick it up where I left off. It's just something I want to do. One of the things that I put aside because I didn't have the time. So I'm going back to that. I want to do that. Because I've done practically everything else. I've traveled all over the country. I've traveled to 10 countries. I've got plaques all over my walls in my office. So, hey, let me do this.
Right. As I've heard more times than not, Mr. Swanigan, it's never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to learn a new language. It's never too late to pick up where you left off on the piano. And it's never too late to share your journey. Because I'm certain that, the amount of time that we're afforded on the podcast, not enough to fully encapsulate your journey as you know it to be. But if you put that in the form of an audio book, you put that in a hard copy book, and then I'm certain that we will be able to accomplish that feat. So I really think, just from my knowledge of your journey, I know how inspiring it's been to me. And as I'm sure it's going to be to our viewers and listeners, there's millions of people out there that I'm sure will be inspired by your journey. And I hope that you can make the time on your busy schedule to share that.
I'll take that in consideration. I've been thinking about it. I have some notes and whatnot. Got to collect all those notes and whatnot.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. Mr. Swanigan, as we close out, I want to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
Be yourself. Look to a higher being. Choose your friends carefully. And I put friends in quotation marks.
This has been an honor for us to be in the presence of a living legend. What it is you were able to bring, not just to St. Louis, but the contribution that you made to us as a whole, as far as the Black community. I salute you. And I'm certain that we didn't even touch on a fraction of your accomplishments. And I'm familiar with the fact that you weren't just a founding member of 100 Black Men of America Incorporated, but I do want to give our viewers and listeners the opportunity to hear some of the positions that you held.
I was the president of the St. Louis chapter. I became the first treasurer of 100 Black Men of America Incorporated. In fact, my title is Treasurer Emeritus. And now I sit on the executive committee and I sit on the board of directors for 100 Black Men of America Incorporated. Yeah. All the way up. Those are positions that I've had down through the years.
Because I definitely wanted to allow our viewers and listeners to be fully aware of some of the titles that you've held and positions that you held within the organization. If someone wanted to get in contact with you and have you come and speak and share your journey in person or virtually, as similar to how you're doing today, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
You want to do it, you have my telephone number, you have my email address. Either of the two would be okay. Or even if you have to go through the 100 Black Men national office in Atlanta, they can contact me. Easiest way is through my email address, or either the telephone number or the cell phone number, okay?
Because I'm certain that that's a question that our viewers and listeners are going to have. So we'll make certain that if we get any of those offers or questions as it pertains to your availability, we'll make certain that we send them your way. And if not, they can go through the corporate headquarters in Atlanta, because, again, I'm certain that this conversation is going to lead to other opportunities, because you're a man that doesn't like to sit down. So I'm sure you're going to continue to find yourself on the move. And if we can add to that movement, we welcome that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
And not only do I want to thank you for spending so much time with us, Mr. Swanigan, I also want to thank our viewers and listeners. Whether you're watching us on Spotify or you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening to us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week, we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Mr. Swanigan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you.
So too do I. I've truly enjoyed this. This was an honor.
Thank you. Thank you.